So let's go forward in this day. Next, we would like to invite people here on the stage with us. Please welcome Pauliina Lapio, Jaakko Kemppainen, Prescott from Manchester, Tuukka Pasanen, Iina Ockenström, and Miina Korpi.
This creative group has been the engine behind the developing project in the Central Finland Hospital. A unique artist in residency model was pioneered with two artists, Prescott and Tuukka Pasanen, in the youth psychiatric unit in September this year. Now we will hear the team's discussion about the project and the birth of the artwork Pascal. It is my great pleasure also to introduce today's second guest star from Manchester, the beautiful Prescott here, artist leader of Lime Art Manchester.
Sorry, some technical, always. Okay, good afternoon all. I hope your day has been good so far. Has it? Yeah, good to know. I am Pauliina, as you heard, from Arts Promotion Center, and I am here to introduce our amazing project. Artist in Residency in Central Finland Hospital Psychiatric Ward. Long word. I have my colleague Jaakko Kemppainen here. And of course, our artists in residency, Prescott from Lime Art and Tuukka Pasanen from Ilmi. Last but not least, we have two amazing staff members from hospital ward, psychologist Iina Ockenström and occupational therapist Miina Korpi. I will first tell some words about the hospital participatory art program and residency concept in hospitals. Same time, you can see some pictures of the residency and the whole project here on the background. I think it's changing in some point. Let's hope so. After introduction, I'm going to give word to participants here on the stage. We are going to talk about the project and how it went. In the end, the audience has possibility to ask questions as well. So I will tell something about this history. Artists in Residency started at Arts Promotion Center in 2015 in nursing homes and elderly care units. Idea was to put social and healthcare units to plan and execute long-term artistic work in their daily life and daily basis. Arts Promotion Center wanted to offer simple and cost-effective way to promote well-being effects of arts in those units. Work started and a concept was about to born. After a few years from residency program was launched, we did our first hospital-related residency with young adults with mental health issues. We got good feedback from artists and staff. Also, participants were reported of having good effects in their self-confidence and social skills. Few years ago, Central Finland, upcoming Hospital Nova, wanted to build participatory art program beside this visual art program. And I was asked to come work with it. The program itself considers many variations of participation, mostly from staff and patients' point of view. It will be released next spring to this Hospital Art Committee before new hospital will be opened next year. In this participatory program, it was quite sure that we want to test something practical before this final recommendations or program will be launched. Also, I wanted to include evaluation, so the results could be seen and shown to the hospital lead So we got permission to start preparing our pilot artist in residency at the hospital psychiatric ward. Same time I had done collaboration with Dawn, as we all have heard here from Lime Art Manchester. She's leading the Lime Art and also printmaking artist herself. First, I asked her to mentor me to build this participatory art program. And she also visited our hospital a few years ago. We did visit in Manchester Hospital 2 years earlier. And there, in fact, I realized how this participatory art program should be built also here in Finland. I called Dawn about the residency idea in hospital, and suddenly Dawn said, this is history, that it would be amazing to do this kind of residency herself as an artist, as a printmaker. And while sitting on tram next day, I realized that why shouldn't she come to work here in Finland with us? I thought it a couple of weeks, called the hospital staff members, what they think about the idea. Having guests from Manchester, I called my supervisor Johanna, what she thinks about it, could it be possible? And then I wondered, like, could it be possible?
Yeah, and I heard that this was the point where I was like got into this project. I heard that Dawn needed someone to work with her, doing some electronic stuff and interactivity and so on. And we just had started this program for or this regional artist for games as art. And we are starting to talk about games as art and what can we do with games. So we decided like, maybe we should combine these two things, like having game artists working with Dawn at the hospital. This would be really great because there are like quite a lot of things that we didn't know and we wanted to try out. Like we didn't have any information about how we could work at the hospital. How could we bring some game elements into hospital and art? What would it be like for people like Dawn and Tuukka to work together and so on? So many unknown things, and it felt quite dangerous. So we decided to do that.
I will give this microphone now here. Can we find another one? Is there other microphone?
No.
Matti is pointing some.
There's one coming.
No. Somebody's eaten our microphones. Now we are like departed. Can we sit? Yes, we can.
Yes, please.
Yes, please. It's chilled out. Can you come closer, or could we come? Nice. Now it looks nicer. You can also come closer if you want. Okay, I was first thinking to ask, so you could introduce yourself and what's your work status, like how you are working and where you are working. Maybe first we could say about you, because you sit next to me.
Hello, I'm Tuukka Pasanen, and I was this residency game artist. Yeah, let's talk about rest in the next.
Hi, I'm Dawn Prescott. I'm from Manchester, as you all know, and I came over to lead on the arts project at the Central Finland Hospital. I've been working in the arts and health sector for nearly 20 years now, with Clive Parkinson for many years, my mentor and guru. And I came over here invited by Arts Promotion Centre to lead on this project in this psychiatric unit in Central Finland, using the process of printmaking with young people. I think we'll talk more about the project
Yeah.
in a moment. I do get carried away, and once I get a microphone, I struggle to pass it on. So,
thank you. So my name is Miina Korpi. I'm an occupational therapist in the Central Finland Hospital, and I work at the ward and also at the outpatient clinic with adolescents psychiatric ward. Yes.
Hello, and I'm Iina Ockenström. I'm a psychologist at the same unit where Miina works. And also concerning today's subject, I also have a double-sided interest because I also have a master's degree in art history, and I have been studying emotional responses for art, so interested in this subject from these both perspectives.
Yeah, and before you give the microphone, you could tell us what kind of unit or ward do you have there in hospital? Tell me what is the age range and how many patients you have, and this description about this unit.
Yeah, so we have an inpatient unit, 10 patients maximum. Age range is from 13 to 18 years old. Do you have something to add?
Yeah, that's quite shortly about it. It's a closed ward. Yeah, the maximum is 10 patients, and I work with the outpatient clinic, so we do of course collaborate with the outpatients.
Yeah, and how long time the patients are in the ward?
It varies very much. Some people, on a crisis stage, they can stay there for 2 or 3 days, and then there are also long-term patients that have been there for months.
I think the mean time for hospitalization in our unit, I heard, is 2 weeks, but that's just the mean. So some people stay there for a night or two, and some stay there for months even.
Yeah, and what kind of issues these young people have? Can you tell something?
All sorts of issues. We have a lot of eating disorders. The patients have a lot of eating disorders, and then anxiety issues, depression, psychotic patients.
Suicidal thoughts are quite a common reason for hospitalization. It ranges.
Yeah. Yeah, and we chose this unit because there has been so much evidence of how art affects in mental well-being, and I heard that there's lots good response from psychiatric units that they would like to have more art. So we sneaked in with these 2 amazing artists. So I would like to ask about your first feelings, if you remember the time when artist in residency started or when you heard about it. So what was your feeling in that point, or how did you think about it? You can start, Dawn.
I was really excited to be working in a different country for a start, and I was really, I've worked a lot before with mental health services with adults around the northwest of England, so I was really keen to see what the kind of cultural differences were here. It was kind of an experiment as well, because we were I have used the process of printmaking before, but I'm a printmaker, and I just wondered how it was going to work, mainly with the language barrier, because very embarrassed to say I don't speak Finnish, but I am trying to learn. I am trying to learn. I've got an app. I'm trying to learn. But it was really interesting because the work that we did is very non-verbal, being in a setting, in an acute hospital setting with these young people. It was, at the beginning, one member of staff said to me, you know, a lot of these patients are mute. They may not speak to you. I said, that's fine, because, you know, we're making art, so I can do demonstrations and then they can get involved. And it was kind of figuring out the lay of the land, I guess, at the beginning. And a really important part of that, it was a 4-week residency. The first week was really, really, really important because we spent the whole week kind of meeting the staff and figuring out who was who we were going to be working with, getting familiar with the unit as well, being in the hospital and setting up our studio and all our things. So first impressions were, it was really great. One of the first things that I really picked up on was how cooperative everybody was at the hospital. And I really noticed as well this thing here where there doesn't seem to be that much of a hierarchy. You could have been talking to the director of the hospital and it's just, you wouldn't know, you know, people here are really cooperative. And that's one thing that really struck with me at the beginning, which gave me a lot of confidence to then go forward and kind of deliver this project.
Yeah, and we say here that we have hierarchy in social and healthcare, and you say there's none.
Compared to the UK, it feels very, very different, but I've been there for a long time, so...
Yeah, sorry, there's some music background sometimes. This is video from the printmaking process. And those music.
Tuukka
Can continue.
Do you want to say something?
Yeah. The first things that I thought that okay, I'm going to the hospital with some kind of a youth that have very big mental issues, that how can I cope with them as I sometimes cannot cope with myself. So I was a little bit worried about that, but actually it was kind of everything gone very well. After all, everybody were, like Don said, very helpful, and if we had some kind of a trouble, we always got some kind of a help. But the first thing, I was kind of a shock at the start. Yeah.
How about you? Was it a shock having 2 artists like this?
Well, not a shock. Maybe it was a pleasant surprise, because I think amidst our staff members, like almost everyone, I think, was very open for this kind of collaboration, but it was kind of new, I think, for us that, oh my goodness, you could do this, like they could come here and they are actual artists, and whoa, this is something really great. I think the first feelings were like quite enthusiastic, I think.
Yeah, at least personally I was very excited to hear about the project, and then when I met you, Pauliina, and then when the artists came, I was like impressed that our the leading people had decided that this is a good idea and we're supporting this, and they just gave us like an open space or area to make some kind of a project together. So it felt like the right way to do things, and differently than we're used to, maybe.
Yeah, I also remember that this atmosphere from the hospital was from the first point really like open-minded, and they wanted to just try out whatever comes in. Like, just let's do it without hesitation. Yeah. Yeah. How about this participatory art? Dawn is like, you have like almost 20 years experience, or what kind of experience? You have done in Manchester, but how did you?
So at the hospital in central Manchester, it's quite a large hospital. We have 22,000 staff that work for the trust. It's absolutely enormous. So we've been based there for nearly 50 years now. Lime's one of the longest standing arts organisations in the UK. We've got a massive portfolio, but I've been there for about 9 years now, working in different roles, working as a lead artist, working as a project manager, and now working as the director of the arts programme. But we have several strands to our programme. We have an environmental arts programme where we do specific sort of site-specific permanent installations, and then we have our participatory programme, so we have musicians, visual artists, dancers, sound artists, all working across the hospitals, mainly at the bedside of the patients on various projects. So we have a massive, really important thing where if we're delivering any arts project in the hospital, we make sure that the artist works in a collaborative way with the patients and with the staff, with the service users. So it's really, really important for artists to facilitate those clinicians and the service users to be part. I can hear Pascal in the background. It's him. There he is. But it's something. Pascal's interactive as well. He's part of our conversation. So, yeah, it's just a really important thing because the clinicians have all this expertise, and then the service users have all this expertise based on their experience. So for an artist to work in that dynamic, it just feeds the creative process that in such a rich way. And that's essentially our philosophy across our whole programme. It's about collaboration and inclusivity and joint decision making. So I don't know if you want me to say anything else about participation.
Yeah, it was about participation and how to involve staff members and patients also in the work from the beginning, not just to the end.
Yeah,
like
so
when the result is ready.
Yeah, it's always a staged process. So the artist will have a concept idea and then discuss it. It's dialogue. It's just about having a dialogue with the participants and it being a two-way thing, you know, information and creative process. It sounds simple, but some of it sometimes can be very tokenistic, consultation. And participation. So there's a real skill to making sure that it's done properly as well. I guess it's like a quality control thing. You've got to understand the complexities of the hospital environment and how to work within them, which is why mentoring and training for artists that are interested in this field is really important as well.
Yeah, and that was one reason why Dawn was also chosen, because you have so long history in this participation and how to train artists. So we could also learn about your work. And now I would like to ask from staff members that how did this participatory program work? Did you see some effects in your patients and staff?
Yes, we did, and the other staff members did too. It was, I think, it was very important that the setting was that we're all taking part and we're all doing, so that staff members couldn't just stand there and watch and observe, but we were all doing on the same level. Like, yes, that was important. And then what the outcomes or what we saw that happened was kind of two different kind of things. I think some patients that were very shy and quiet and passive maybe, during these workshops they became more active and participated more, started to having eye contact and talk and that sort of things, which was great, and it has also kept on. And then there was this other types of kids that were very active, hyperactive, and they could get the experience of being able to focus and maintain attention to something and have something like start doing something and having something finished within the workshop session, or working for 2 hours, which was pretty amazing for a patient that can't still focus for 5 minutes in a schoolroom.
And I'd just like to add that I think that is the process of printmaking and making sure that the techniques that you're taking into the hospital aren't just wishy-washy, sort of craft-based things. Printmaking is a highly sort of technical, artistic process, and I think I just wanted to make a point that that's really, really important, and I think that's why this particular patient held his attention for so long. So we were doing monoprints, and I showed him some of my tricks and techniques, and he used them and he applied them and he made the most amazing artwork. It was so energetic and free and abstract, and he just poured his energy into the work, didn't he? And it was incredible to witness.
You can see, of course, these artworks here also in background and this process. How about Iina, as psychologist? How did you see patients?
Yes, I saw these same effects that Miina described. We have been talking about this a lot among us. And one thing from a staff member's point of view is that it was very healthy in a psychosocial sense to completely lose our roles, like between the staff members and the patients. We were all making art. We were all sort of art makers or artists, and for a while we weren't the psychologist and the patient there, and we were all just focused on this process together. And I think it was very beautiful, and it's very important for all of our staff members to have also this experience to really get to see the young patient in a totally different environment, in another light. It's very important for our work when we have to evaluate things or see how they are doing, and also especially for the young people in their lives and in their very distressing time in their life. It's very valuable that they have this chance to function as an art maker and not just a troubled teenager that they often get viewed as.
Yeah, I had an opportunity to also participate in one of those workshops, and it was like really fun and eye-opening and beautiful experience working with all those patients also. But I'd like to ask Tuukka. You were there to kind of combine these printmaking processes or prints that were made by patients with some kind of interactive electronics and game-like or game elements. And how did you find that? How did it feel?
It was kind of a difficult stuff to present those kids because they didn't have any kind of electrical skills that you can show, okay, this is this kind of a system and you just plug this in and this out. But actually it was good that the Dawn is not that technical, and she came on very kind of a brilliant ideas how to represent these very not so easy things to these kids that they can also participate in getting this our last work alive, because mainly they saw something, I show, okay, you can do this and this and this kind of things, but I don't know how they understood or was it good. But actually the opening after they started to speak us and started to participate more, they started to say, okay, kind of everybody gives something to this Pascal, our last piece. And it was nice to see that even though that I was thinking first that, okay, how this goes, this girl doesn't speak anything, okay, I'm in right place. But in the last sessions, they kind of open up. They didn't speak, but we find a way to communicate them with us. Yeah, also, yes.
And just to kind of explain the process, because we had 4 weeks and we had 1 week of planning with all the hospital staff and meeting everybody. Then me and Tuukka had 2 solid weeks of delivering workshops, and we delivered 2-hour workshops at 2 o'clock every afternoon for 2 weeks. And what was really, really important was involving the patients, because we were producing a piece of artwork, Pascal, and Pascal was actually developed through talking and doing this work with the patients. So as artists, we involved them with every stage of our creative process. So when we were developing the sounds, we had to improvise quite a lot, didn't we, on the spot? Because people, you ask them a question, they just all look at you, nobody responds. So we had to come up with quite creative ways of getting people to be involved in that process. And do you remember we did the thing with the sounds? And it was great.
Yeah, it was one of the greatest achievements that we could get them to respond to very abstract sounds, that they could place them to some kind of emotions, what kind of emotion they feel when they heard this sound. So it was kind of and I like this creative stuff because also these kids, because they were they see through us that we are just improvising something, but they kind of like it and they played with us, and it was a really nice feeling.
Yeah, there was a lot of play involved.
There was a lot of play.
And there was lots of music and,
just
expression.
Dancing was missing.
And you got them to laugh, which is not so, which is quite rare sometimes on the ward.
They mostly laughed to me.
See what happens here.
Yeah. Then it was really good to have you there.
Tuukka, do you want to just explain the concept of Pascal and where that came from?
If you are thinking about this Pascal, the Pascal is named after this French Pascal Pleasure or something, I cannot speak, but he knows lots about pressure and stuff like that. But in Finnish, if you are having Pascal on Pascal, then you can feel what kind of a joking it made when I started to speak then about this Pascal guy. And
so there was a lot of laughter. I had no idea what was going on.
No, didn't understand about this, why it was so funny. I tried to explain, but I don't know if you understand it today, why they are laughing so. But it was something like 10 minutes laughing, and after that we thought, okay, we have to think about next name, but they didn't want it to think anything else after that. They saw this coming.
Stuck.
Yeah. But the concept is like that, the Pascal is kind of a creature from outer space or somewhere else that has very limited capability of communicating with us, because she or he, she doesn't have a gender or something, but she's kind of has no ways to communicate with us, like these kind of kids are kind of a closed package or something. So the Pascal is kind of that kind of a creature that has lots of problems and just keep them inside and cannot communicate. So we try to, these kids like this way of thinking, that we are creating this kind of a creature that tries to communicate the outer world with some kind of a way. And we have this less time to make it much more beautiful, but it actually turned out very good.
And we turned this around in 3 weeks. The Pascal was built on site at the hospital.
This is Pascal.
This is the microcontroller, isn't it? That was programmed to.
Yeah, there is these two guys who actually built the Pascal mostly.
These are our heroes, aren't they?
These are
the carpenters at the hospital that got involved and built the frame for us and spent so much time helping us get this together. They were amazing.
Yeah, and these are all made by our patients, these artworks with monoprint and etc. And then there's lights that are blinking like that. If you are walking like this forward, it may starting to breathe like this. and then it's starting to make a sounds. And if you are staying in front of us and moving a little bit, it's just breathes you and trying to communicate with you a very not so understandable way. But
so the idea was that if you engage and interact with something and give something time, it responds really well to you. So if you stand in front of Pascal for more than a split second, he starts to make these ethereal, like lovely sounds. So it was a really nice concept based on our experience of working with these young people in the hospital.
And in so short time, like 1 month, 4 weeks.
3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Yeah.
Building the Pascal was something like 1.5 weeks.
Yeah.
With all this
fabricating the unit.
Fabricating, yes. And also we didn't have this post-strike then, but our things didn't come in a post, and it caused a little bit problems.
My next question would have been that what kind of problems, or what was the worst moment of the project?
Oh my God, it was 3 days before the Dawn has put it Thursday, 3 o'clock, that we have an opening of the Pascal, and the Monday at the 9 o'clock I check out the post that okay, our staff is coming on today at 7, and at 7 they didn't come, and on Tuesday they didn't come, and I go and picking up from Helsinki. So it was tight schedule, so it was the biggest problem that we have to build up the electronics and build up the whole thing and put them working, but I don't know how it worked.
We got there in the end.
We got it working. Yeah.
It all worked, but from my point of view, I don't think there were any major problems. That it felt so fluid, the whole project, to me, because of people's support, the staff support from the staff, and that willingness to help us. It was absolutely overwhelming. You know, the carpenters and the technical director, and you know, these guys.
Also
these guys like were incredibly supportive. You know, and I think if everyone's chipping in together, you can't really go wrong. I mean, we did this on minimal funds. We produced this piece of art, which could go into a gallery. It's that standard because the quality of it is very high, and we did it with very little resource.
Yeah,
so.
And we didn't know what to expect when we started. We had no idea what's coming. It was like mystery in the beginning.
Yeah. But that's part of the beauty of the project. You don't want to specify an outcome. You want the process to come before the outcome. The process of working with the young people and getting their opinion on things feeds into the outcome. You know, that's really important.
Yeah, it was really great to get these patients to kind of inside this project, that they could give their voice to this Pascal and say, okay, we kind of like this, and I like to do this kind, because it was amazing, like they learned this, making this printing, that they started from 0, and after 2 weeks they were really good.
They were, I mean, given that the patients weren't completely non-verbal in the beginning, and when we sat around the table the first day, nobody could look at me, nobody could pick up a pencil, and then the progression over the 2 weeks of the change and the increase in self-esteem to the point that patients were asking me for colours, they were asking me to mix paints, we were working on pieces together. That was really important as well, like doing collaborative artworks together and just tailoring the techniques in response to their reaction to us delivering those workshops. For me as an artist, having worked on this residency, the most important thing was having the time to prepare and the time to reflect. So in such an intensive period, so delivering the workshop, going back to the apartment, not having any friends here, not knowing anyone, having no distractions, and just focusing on response and reflection and feeding that into the session the next day. And I think we had really great results. The patients were absolutely incredible. The creativity in that room that was unleashed was just completely inspiring.
Yeah, and from the start, from the moment that they see the Pascal alive, was amazing. They kind of hang around with you, Dawn, like, okay, this is our artist. We are here, the girls and guys who didn't talk us.
Yeah, we had a posse in the end. We had a gang, didn't we?
Yeah,
like
yeah, we have,
us and the patients. We were all
entourage.
Yeah. Entourage.
Yeah. How about Iina and Miina? How did you see the patients in new light?
I think I already said something about, but something that I wanted to say was that, especially well with all kinds of problems that they have, but especially with the eating disorder, I think there's this thing that not being seen, that is in the core of the problem of the disorder, and that they, in the workshops and in the art printmaking, they became available. They became to be seen, and they were seen.
And they dared to be seen.
Yes,
I think that's one issue that a lot of our young patients struggle with. They are too afraid to exist in a world. And now they had a chance to do so in a social environment, in a collaborative environment. I think this whole project really boosted their agency, the sense of, I can make things, I can leave a mark, and it's beautiful, and people keep telling me it's beautiful, and they are admiring it. It's very powerful.
And they really enjoyed that, getting the feedback from the artist. And when the most patients didn't find the language an issue, they didn't really, but some needed like some translation. And when I said that this is an artist that has been working with art for 20 years, and she says that you really are great, and they were like they couldn't believe it, but they were so pleased to have the positive feedback. And you can still see it. When I talked to this week, I was talking to one patient that was part of the workshops for the whole time. And I saw her this week, and I talked about Dawn coming, and you can just see that something lights up in their eyes. It's just, because you know them, and you can see that it's different from the communication that they usually have with the staff.
Yeah.
They're in the role of the patient, but now they remember the connection, and it's really...
Yeah, and we were talking about this with Dawn after the residency, that for some of the patients this can be like the turning point in their recovery. Do you think so?
Easily, I think, because it's such a remarkable experience, a unique experience that one will remember. And I think we have already seen in some young people that, well, of course, because we don't really have strict scientific data, we don't know what really caused the change, but there have been some very great development after the art project, the well-being.
Yeah, can you say some examples?
Like a patient that has suffered from a disorder for years, and that has been in the hospital for months and months and months. And after the art project, of course, we can't say it's from the art project, but after the art project, they've been discharged from the hospital, and they are doing well. They are in school, have started a hobby, and are very much looking forward to meeting Dawn.
Yeah, we cannot say if it's about that, but it's just saying that
after
that happened something. Yeah, too much coincidences. Yeah.
Yeah, about the social skills, I wanted to also remark that these kind of projects are very valuable, because I think these teenagers, as we saw, who struggle with social situations and are very withdrawn, making art, we could actually see how its benefits will work out in this project as well. And art is sometimes referred to as the safe third in a social interaction. So it might really help a lot of people, like instead of just being you and me, like talking one-on-one, there is this process between us and we can discuss this project and process here and what are we doing and learning techniques, and then through that a new social connection can form. I think that is something that we saw happening during those weeks in our unit.
So, what about the future? Have you done any art after the residency, or what have you learned in the unit? How has it continued, this atmosphere?
Well, I have used art and all sorts of methods in my job as an occupational therapist, but after this I maybe gained a little more courage to use really the art methods more, and I have done some new stuff that I haven't done before this project.
Yeah, I have also been using arts in my work before, but I think that definitely this was important that we could get this experience as a group or as a complete unit, that this could happen, we could all be doing this, and we could all throw ourselves into it, and just to see the process. It doesn't really need to have that type of deeper meaning or like this is an intervention for this and that, but it's more about bringing everyone together and going through the experience together.
Yeah, and this was pilot in hospital, so based on this experience we can like explain to hospital what has happened and what should be happened in the future, and also for other hospitals too, or nursing homes, or whatever, who needs this kind of system. Do you want to ask something from Tuukka or these ladies?
Actually, no. I would just want to comment that I felt really privileged to be part of this project, and I think it opened also my thinking about what can be done also in the field of game art, and what kind of possibilities we could have in the future. And I would really like to continue this kind of experimental stuff, and widening also the understanding of the game people about what they can do and how they can earn their living and how they can make the world a better place. This was definitely about making the world a better place, so it was really great.
Yeah, and before this residency started, I remember this point that I had already agreed with Dawn that she's coming, and then we had this open call with Jaakko to this Tuukka's position, and then we had chosen this psychiatric ward, and then I just thought in the summer, what have I done? So many things, we cannot know, unknown field, but it was good. But in this point, I would like to hear if audience have some kind of questions, any questions about residency or from artists, about their work, or from the staff, from Miina and Iina, anything, or from us also. Please ask.
First of all, absolutely marvelous to hear about the results. And second, I think it's amazing how much we could easily do and how difficult it seems to take these assets into practice all over. So I wish that those people who are here and those who are listening on the other side of the wire would take initiative and spread the good word. And actually, my question is that how are you going to proceed? Do you think that the hospital will continue with this method, or was it just a trial?
Well, I think based on these results, because I'm doing this participatory art program, so it's one of the recommendations that this residency model is one good model of work.
And I don't know if you've heard more than me, but I've heard from our head nurse, that there has been applications for resident artists in the future.
Yeah.
So I think there will be some projects to come.
And also in this point I can advertise this new guidebook, How to Organize Residency in Social and Healthcare, published today. Ta-da! Written by some Pauliina, Lapio. So it's some help for those who want to start. This is not all, but some start.
Can I just say something, Pauliina? Because I really want to acknowledge all the work that you've done, and Jaakko as well. Like, you've put so much into driving this forward, and I really, really, really think that we should all acknowledge Pauliina's efforts, because none of this would have happened without her, to be perfectly honest.
Now I'm blushing. Now I'm cold.
True.
Thank you, Dawn.
Yes, hi, psychotomic. I'm Tuukka Koskinen from Taiteen, and I totally agree to what was said about the project. Absolutely amazing. I wanted to know 3 questions as I get the mic. Where is Pascal now? Is he still in the lobby, or
Yes.
Yes, and did the individual patients, or however we can call them, did they get their own piece of their Pascal? Do they have a print of their own from the project? And then the third question is that they were mental illness patients, and there were some very nasty looking knives there. Did you ever have any doubts about the method? Is the printmaking okay it was clearly okay in the mentally challenged people's ward, but did you ever question this, that can you have these really good knives there? Thanks.
So the patients did take away their own work. We had a launch at the end of the project where I think there was about 70 people that came, and we framed some works, and it was amazing that these patients actually came down from the ward to be present at this launch. They hung out with us, like they didn't leave. Every time I moved, they like moved with me, and it was really terrifying for them. It was terrifying for me as well. But yeah, we made sure there was a celebration at the end of the project for them. Just in terms of the tools and the printmaking process, this again is where the sort of really serious stuff comes in, because you just have things, that protocols that you have to follow when you're working in these hospital environments. So with the knives, you just make sure that you give them out and you count them when they come back. But I'm quite interested. I think there's something in giving these young people responsibility to use a tool that somebody might go, what you doing? Don't give them a knife. But I actually think there's something in trusting them. I don't know if you want to add to that, Miina.
Yeah, I think, of course, the risks were analyzed before taking any knives or anything there, but also they're not going to, of course, if there were some patients that were in high risk of harming themselves or others at the moment, they were not included in the workshop at that moment. But almost every patient attended, so that was really nice. And also, they're not going to hurt themselves in front of you. But the important thing is just to count the knives when you take them in and count them when you take them out, so they don't have them for themselves. But there was no problems, and we could use the techniques that you wanted, and there was no problems.
We didn't use the knife straight away. It was almost that element of trust was built between the artists and the patients. You know, that's always the starting point of any arts project. It's about trust, and you get to a certain point, and it felt okay. And we tested it a little bit, gave some patients the knives, and they worked with them and gave them back. So it was very much based on that trust element, I think, without sounding too vague.
Yeah, very good question, indeed, this security.
And you asked about the artwork. Did the patients get themselves some artwork?
Yeah, we framed it, didn't we, and gave them framed works, which went down a treat. So they were presented with their own work.
Except for one.
Who?
For one kid who made 3 such marvelous pieces that they were all included in the final piece, the Pascal. So he didn't get any to bring home, but he has 3 pieces in the final artwork.
And this is the young person who spent 2 hours in the workshop when actually you can't normally concentrate for anything beyond 10 minutes. So
this is a good point for us to stop conversation, this could end.
But can I just say that the artwork is still at the hospital lobby?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
For people to see.
And you can come to see on Friday when there's open doors. We have workshops from dawn also on Friday. But now we can end this discussion, and you can come to ask from Dawn and Iina and Miina and Tuukka after this coffee, I think.
Yes, another big applaud for this amazing group
Yep.
and Pascal, for our international guests.